Welcome back to the Harri and Marcus Podcast, where this week we're talking about Pink Floyd's classic Dark Side of the Moon album and probably plenty of other things that came out 50 years ago. Before we start, have you had a good week since the last? Have you brought millions of singles for your collection?
No, actually. It's end of the month. Well, I've certainly not bought as many records in April as I bought in March, which I've had to set myself a budget for records because the budget I've got now, I did more than twice it last month. So I'm not saying any figures, but I've only slightly gone over this month. So
okay, what about in the last week since the last show? What's the best record you brought? Either collecting wise or music.
Well, the best record I bought was one I've been after for a few years for my EP collection, which was Millie and her boyfriends.
Right.
On the Island label. Sent you a message at the time, if I recall.
I remember you did, yeah.
And a picture. It's got quite a unique cover. So, and it's on the Old Island label, which the really old Island label from the 60s. I sent you saying, at last I've got this and for a good price. And I think I sent you a message the other day saying the dealer went to find it and it didn't have the picture sleeves and asked me if I still had wanted it. So,
which was obviously no.
No, yeah. So because I was so happy with myself for getting it so cheap because it's £100 plus normally. But there we go. That was the best one. But I suppose apart from that, I had Daniel by Elton John turn up a promo single.
Yeah, as I think I messaged you, you're getting quite a good Elton John promo collection, aren't you?
Yeah. I only need. Don't Let the Sun. I need a promo of that. I need Rock and Roll Madonna.
That's going to be a budget.
No, I just missed it a couple of months ago. It'd been sitting on eBay for weeks and weeks. Buy it now. And then I went back at the moment I decided to collect them, it disappeared, and I went back to the eBay dealer and said, "Oh, do you still have this? Will you be relisting it?" And he just came back and said, "No, it's sold."
Right.
So that told me.
A nice abrupt answer.
Yeah.
So
there we go. Nothing to do with. What about you?
As you know, you were with me in the
singles turned up.
Pardon?
Did you have any Jerry Monroe singles turn up?
No. My Jerry Monroe collection has been static for about 4 years, I suppose. It's
logged on your Discogs.
Oh yeah. But the albums aren't. I can't find the albums. So I put them somewhere and I can't find them. But just as a side note here, I collect Jerry Monroe because my mother liked him, and I thought it'd be a novel thing to collect. And of course, I think he's got a great voice and a fantastic stage presence. But I haven't got any Jerry singles for ages. But as you know, you're with me in the record shop last Saturday. We didn't go out this weekend. And I brought Meaty Beaty Big and Bouncy by The Who, which I was playing the other day, which brings back many memories of when we were young.
I bought some, didn't I? I bought a couple of albums, didn't I? I got Relics.
Yeah, you got Relics, yeah.
Floyd, and what was the other one I got? Was it 2 albums, or was it?
I can't remember if it's an album and a few singles or 2 albums. I think it was 2 albums, but I can't remember what the other one was.
It's one on my list, my top 5 albums, I'm sure. But never mind.
But Relics and Meaty Beaty are 2 good albums.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
On to Dark Side. I mean, before we start sort of reminiscing about stories, just a couple of stats. It was the 8th studio album by the Floyd. And it was recorded, it was released the 1st of March 1973 and recorded between the 31st of May 72 and the 9th of Feb 73. So between the last recording and the release, there was only, 2.5 weeks? So it was, that's quite a short period of time.
But it was, they toured it before. Didn't they? They honed it in live performances and then went in to record it, if I'm right.
You are right, because that's one of the stats I came up with. It was the very first time it was ever performed was as Dark Side the Moon, a piece for assorted lunatics, and the idea was to explore madness, as in with Syd Barrett, and then they dropped the idea about the lunatics and just recorded it as an album. But the first time it was ever performed in full was at the Rainbow on the 17th of Feb 72, and after that they toured it and played with it and what have you. But obviously a massive album. It's gone 14 times platinum in the UK, and it charted for 980 consecutive weeks in the USA, and has sold over 45 million copies. One question I was going to ask you, when I was just looking at things, a guy called Steve Hyden, Hyden, he wrote a book about classic albums in the 70s, and according to him, the two classic albums to own in the 70s, if you didn't own any other, were Dark Side of the Moon and Led Zeppelin 4. Do you agree?
No, not at all. No.
If you're going to take the whole 70s, I mean, never mind the bollocks has got to come in there somewhere. That was a defining moment in punk, and that up.
Yeah, well, Led Zeppelin 4 is okay, but there's a lot of tracks on there I jump.
Yeah.
I jump over. I tend to listen to side one only. I don't think I could tell you what's on side two.
I couldn't even tell you what's on side one. I've just played the two well-known tracks of it.
Black Dog, Rock and Roll, Evermore, and Stairway to Heaven, aren't they on side one?
Probably, but I don't think I've ever played it. I probably have played Evermore, but I can't remember it. It's the other three that I know.
The Battle of Evermore with Sandy Denny.
Yes,
on it. Yeah. You know it?
No, yeah.
I think it's Denny, but there we go. But no, I'd in the 70s. I just read the Clash album. I'd like the first Clash album.
Oh yeah.
I'd play that a whole lot more than Led Zeppelin 4.
Well, according to Mr. Hyden, because Dark Side of the Moon was a sort of prog album and Zeppelin 4 was a rock album, they encompassed the twin poles of teenage desire. But I think that's getting too sort of like arty about rock music. I mean, music's there to be enjoyed. You either like an album or you don't. I mean, I liked the first that little run of Bowie albums from Man Who Sold the World through to Station to Station. I loved that run, and I put any one of those in my favourite albums of the 70s. It'd be an interesting show to do one day. Each do our top 5 albums of the 70s. It'd be quite a hard pick.
Yeah, but it would change. I'd probably have a Joan Armour Trading's album in there, which is a personal thing to me.
Yeah.
I'm sure in everyone else's book it's not in the top 100 albums of the 70s, but to me it was a great great album.
Oh yeah,
it's all subjective, isn't it?
Oh, it is. Yeah. I mean, there are certain albums that, like Dark Side of the Moon, that have gone down as sort of like classic albums. I mean, I think when we were at school, virtually everyone had Dark Side of the Moon. But
how would you know that? You weren't at school, were you, when it came out?
Bastard. Yeah, I'd left. I left in January 73. I'd left 2 months before.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Okay, I'll rephrase that. I was actually nicking that off you. I'll be honest here, because you once told me that everyone in your class had Dark Side of the Moon, so I was nicking your line there, saying you got to be back for it. But lots of people had Dark Side of the Moon, but I will admit that I didn't. I got Dark Side of the Moon really
well. I need to challenge you on that as well, because I've been giving it some thoughts about when I actually bought it. And I can't believe I said everyone in my class had Dark Side of the Moon. I'd have not known that.
To be honest, it might be one of those sort of weird things that I thought you said and you never said.
Yeah,
but I thought you said that everyone in your class had it. No, I remember you telling me that you wore the album out because you played it so much.
Yeah. But I think I must have bought it in 74. Yeah, I'm not sure. Thinking about it, I'm not sure when I actually bought Dark Side of the Moon. There's no way that I bought it in March 1973, because I just had a little paper round, and I think all the money I'd have earned would have gone buying that rather than on number 10. For sneaking into school. So I probably bought it in 74, but it definitely had the stickers and the 2 posters. I put the posters on my wall, and eventually I put the stickers on my guitar case.
Right, yeah.
A few years later, so I had held on to the stickers for quite a time, but not realising, not being we were collectors, weren't we? But very collecting without knowing what we were doing.
Yeah, we were collecting what we liked. We weren't collecting and sort of like looking for.
But it's very proud, wasn't it? Your record collection of 50 singles was sacred. Weren't it that thing? So yeah, I think I probably bought it in 74, and then it's just the best thing I'd ever had. It's a great album, as I said. I used to play it all the time, but we'll get to that later on when we get to tracks. What about you? When did you buy it? Did you buy it before me, or did you? Were you influenced by me and anybody else to buy it?
No, I was led the way. Unlikely. I probably brought it 74, 75. In 73, I used to listen to all my albums going to people's houses, like that guy Trevor I was talking about. Was there a track called Clever Trevor by Ian Drury?
I think so, yeah.
But I used to go to that guy Trevor's house, and he had Don't Shoot Me, and I couldn't afford his whole album, and I'm sure he had this one. And I used to sort of like specifically make him my best pal for a week and go around and listen to his albums or an album that he had that I wanted to listen to.
But you did get Don't Shoot Me in the end, didn't you, mate? Yeah, well done.
And I even brought Don't Shoot Me at some point. I don't know when. Must have been in the 2000s on double CD in original artwork, fold out triple sleeve, and it had a DVD with it on the making of Don't Shoot Me. It's in the cupboard somewhere. I never watched the DVD, but the reason I brought it was for the DVD, and I never watched it.
Right, cool.
Must watch that one day. Going back to Dark Side. What do you reckon on the now sort of infamous struggle or power struggle between Gilmour and Waters? I was just sort of looking at the writing credits on Dark Side. It comes out as quite even. I mean, they all wrote at least one track, and I think I did jot down some quick notes. Waters wrote 3 and co-wrote 2, including Time, which was written by the whole band. And where is it? Gilmour wrote 1 and co-wrote 2, but by the time they got to The Wall, it was just literally Waters and Gilmour that were writing, and mainly Waters, because he claims after The Wall that he had to go into therapy for 20 years. But there was, according to what I was reading about Dark Side, there was even the struggle starting there, because they both disagreed on how the final mix should be done. One wanted it done as a sort of a more airy sort of psychedelic mix, and one wanted it done as a more basic mix, and they ended up compromising because they got in some independent producer who's sort of steered them down the middle. But do you think in bands like that have got two strong individuals like Waters and Gilmour, Lennon, McCartney, Jagger, Richards, Daltrey, Townsend, etc., that it helps the band be more productive and more creative, or in the end destroys the band? I mean, McCartney supposedly tried to take the Beatles over after George Martin died.
Well, not after George Martin died.
Sorry,
Brian Epstein.
I mean Brian Epstein. Yeah, sorry. I said George Martin because I've just
George Martin outlived two of the Beatles at least. So
yeah. I've just been watching that video you sent me, and George Martin was mentioned in that, and that's stuck in my brain. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I think looking at Let It Be, or at least a Peter Jackson one, McCartney was certainly driving everything, weren't he?
Yeah.
On that. I don't know. I mean, the only experience I've had of really strong-minded members not budging on anything was that great band Never Mean Machine, which actually had some involvement there, and you could see that the singer and the lead guitarist were on, while there is the songwriting team, they're on edge. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They never finished their great classic, The Penny Song.
No, that's still got to be finished.
Yeah.
I've heard rumour that we might get first play of that on our channel.
Well, listeners can look forward to that then.
Yeah. But I do believe that part of the tension there was the fact that the singer was sort of very monotone and couldn't sing in key.
Similar to the guitarist.
Yeah.
Couldn't play in key.
But I remember Sunshine of My Love.
I remember How Long Are You Even Worse.
Oh yeah. Oh, happy days.
I'm sure the listeners are starting to drop off now with all these old home stories.
Yeah, personal stories about the band that we were in many, many years ago.
But I don't know. All these stories. I mean, the only thing I've got any real evidence about is watching Let It Be, and how much can you take that given the film version, where they're all at each other's throats and hate each other, and the Peter Jackson version where it all looks like happy times. It's what It's what the producer decides to show you.
I think with Waters,
the wall thing.
With Waters and Gilmour, if what you read is true, they just didn't get on towards the end because apparently they've only ever seen each other twice since Waters left him. When did he leave? Not 80 or 81 or something. And once was when they bumped into each other on the back of a studio set when they were both recording various things for their own solo projects, and once was for Live Aid.
Yeah.
And they haven't conversed. Gilmour once said that he wishes him no harm, but or ill, but he just doesn't have anything in common with him. And I think Gilmour was quite happy to get control of the band. I'll be honest, I can't name or say that I've honestly listened to anything that Pink Floyd had done after the Wall. Didn't they? Was one a momentary lapse of reason or something?
Something like that. I mean, I'm a classic one with my my listening doesn't end with 79, but most of my collection of records finishes then. So no, I'm not. Don't think I've actually listened to anything after the Wall like yourself.
And I found the Wall hard going. I've never listened to the whole thing. It's a really sort of and the film is really depressing. I've never managed to watch the whole of the film either. The single was great, Another Brick in the Wall, but right, going back to...
But that wasn't sanctioned by the band either.
Wasn't it? All right.
Well, no, because Bob Ezrin went away and did all of Noviover dubs on it without their permission.
Oh, right. I didn't realise. No, I would have thought Pink Floyd would have been throwing out lawsuits left, right and centre for that sort of thing.
Well, because they didn't like singles either. They hadn't issued a single for years and years. And this was, I think Bob Ezrin went away and played around with it and then brought it without their permission and brought it back to them. And then they then heard for commercial possibilities for it.
Right.
Like that. Listeners will tell us how wrong I am about that, but it's something like that. But I'm sure it's Bob Ezrin was involved.
Yeah, I think I'm sure he was, because you've mentioned that to me before.
Yeah, with Alice Cooper. He worked with Alice Cooper, didn't he?
Yeah. And now, on to what we touched on the David Bowie show, the infamous "Are they ripping fans off with the reissues" thing. There's been plenty of reissues of Dark Side of the Moon, and I'm just having a quick look at... I did jot it down because there was... Here we go, yeah. Released originally in 1973, remastered in 1979, and then released as a gold track Ultra CD in Japan only in 1983. And then in 1993, on its 20th anniversary, the 30th anniversary was a 5.1 surround sound mix, and it was re-released on vinyl in 2003, 2011, 2007, and in the 50th anniversary box set in 2023, each one with a different mix. I know that you, as a collector, obviously prefer collecting the originals. Do you think that this is just like, how many people are going to know those last four vinyl remixes between 2003 and 2023? How many people are going to actually notice the difference unless it's really, really major?
Yeah. I think a lot of these, Dark Side of the Moon is probably something, well, I'd have wanted. I liked it being a really nice, clean copy with no jumps or sort of anything. And it's an iconic album, so there's still young people getting into it for the first time. And an original 1973 copy is out of reach for most of those. In mint condition, it'd be no fortune. So it does actually appeal to a market for younger buyers now, being able to get a classic album in perfect, perfectly new condition.
Yeah, I never thought of that angle. I was just thinking of these sort of completist collectors who wanted to have everything that came out by the band and sort of like making them shell out 7 times.
Which it does appeal to. It does appeal to as well. I imagine. How many copies of Glad Insane did you say you have? 5?
5, yeah.
Yeah. The only albums I have 2 copies of are the ones where I bought the second one by no mistake. I just don't buy remasters and stuff unless it's something which is to get the original is compromised by the price. So I've had to buy what did I get? I got Wish You Were Here.
Yeah.
Remaster. It's in the black plastic. So it's still got a thing. I can't open that with a black plastic round it. I'll have to leave it. But I say I'm not really bothered about. I'm happy to play it on Spotify, but it fills that gap in the collection where I actually have it and I can tick it off of another list, which is a lot of people are saying that's pointless. Why do you buy records and not play them? But there we go.
Oh yeah.
That's my deal.
I've brought the remasters, which is probably stupid because my stereo doesn't show any difference in the sound. I've tried, but
you need to change that nail.
Yeah, I did.
On the arm. I
took one of the pennies off the head, but I drew the line because in 1983, Bowie had signed to EMI EMI America and released Let's Dance, and RCA had one last push at making money out of him and re-released all of his 70s albums exactly the same as they were, no difference except they weren't on an orange RCA label, they were on a black RCA.
And how much do they all go for now?
People still are selling money for them. There's a black label, Changes One Bowie on eBay. I was looking at the other day. It's $19.99 you want for it. But you can buy the original orange label for less than that on eBay. It's just, I think people just don't look at the fact that it's been re-released. They just look at the original release date and think, oh, this is a 76 Bowie album. I think it's got to be worth 20 quid sort of thing.
Yeah.
But, so I was just sort of saying what you thought about the whole re-release thing. So let's get into the album. What are your memories of it?
Well, my memories of it, it's the great thing. I used to have one of these little portable record players, and when I went to bed, I used to put Dark Side of the Moon on to help me go to sleep, and I'd wake up in another morning and it was still
clicking
round.
Yeah.
I remember that can't have done the album much cop.
I remember a certain drummer we used to have. His Bang & Olufsen record player didn't have an arm that lifted at the end of the record, and it was some Stevie Wonder album. I think the track was Living in the City, and at the end of it, on the run out track, there's all this sort of like cops shouting at people and all that business. And he'd fallen asleep the night before, and I'd gone round. His mum let me up, and he was fast asleep. And this run out track was just playing at top volume. I don't know how the hell he slept through that all night. It was, but it's one of those things we all used to do. I think fall asleep and leave the record player on. I actually don't have very many early memories of it, apart from going around Trevor's house to listen to it and thinking it was a great album and really wanting to own it. It was really, really different from anything that I'd been into, because I was really into glam rock and Slade and The Sweet and T-Rex and Bowie and
God,
He Who Shall Not Be Named.
So embarrassing. It must have been 74, but I thought I knew this album off by heart. Everything, every heartbeat, everything, right from the start. And I'd convinced myself I could sing it.
Right.
The sound effects from the start to the end. Oh, dear.
You've never told me this story before.
I thought I could sing it, and then I decided to show my prowess to this young lady.
Right.
We were walking down another road, and I think she managed to get her way just when I got in to breathe.
Right.
I just think back, I've never told anyone. She's probably scarred with that. I'm sure she did speak to me after, but it's not a pleasant experience.
Yep, I imagine that because listening to how high some of that singing on there is, you must have strained something.
I did only get to breathe, which is on, the first singing track on side one. Didn't get to the great gig in the sky, fortunately. Imagine that walking down the road.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can indeed. Talking of high vocals and backing vocals, I was sort of brings it around quite nicely to who did the backing vocals. Obviously, Leslie Duncan was one of them. What I didn't realise was Doris Troy was also a backing vocalist on this album.
Yeah. And that rings a bell, yeah.
And according to the notes here, Claire Torrey, Torry, came up with the melody for the high bit on the Great Gig in the Sky.
And didn't they years later have to give her writing credit.
I was just about to say, she sued them and got an undisclosed payment, and after 2010 got a writing credit on all releases.
Yeah.
But when you click on that Doris Troy backing vocals and you click on her name, I was amazed at, I knew that about her solo career and her Apple career and everything else because she's obviously well known and everything. But she was also on Carly Simon's You're So Vain, which I didn't know, and also sang with Humble Pie, Kevin Ayers, George Harrison, Johnny Halliday, Dusty Springfield, Junior Campbell. She sang with everyone.
Great, yeah.
But I never knew she was on Dark Side, and I never knew she was on You're So Vain.
She's another one of those great American singers that, did lots of backing vocal credits, even issued some singles, which died without a trace, but weren't ever able to make the step forward to like that for documentary. No, 20 feet from stardom.
Yeah.
You're backing singer, but not at the front. So. She's another one. She's still alive, is she?
I believe so, yeah. I think so. Yeah. I might be wrong. Hang on. Let me have a check. Doris Troy. Yeah, she's still alive. And she's cool. Aged... Oh, no. She died in 2004, age 67.
That's pity.
Do you remember a single in 1965 that only got to number 47, but you're a 60s collector, called Come Away Melinda?
No.
It was by a Scottish female singer and called Elizabeth Janet Thompson, but she recorded under the name Barry St. John, and she's a backing vocalist on this as well.
Oh, cool.
Barry St. John, the name sort of rings a bell, but I didn't know anything about that Come Away Melinda. But also, I've just noticed by looking at the list of backing vocals, my eyes wandered across to the production team, and the link to the video you just sent me, the video you sent me was about the Wings album produced by Chris Thomas, and he was the mix supervisor on this album.
Yeah, because he worked with the Beatles as well, didn't he, Chris Thomas?
Yeah.
He worked as Abbey Road, EMI, went on this end, obviously went on to the Sex Pistols, and then went on after the Sex Pistols for that even rowdier band Wings.
Yeah. So let's get on to the album itself. Track 1, and Speak to Me by Nick Mason, which is 1 minute long. Sir Giles, is that the word, Sir Giles? It joins Breathe, and it sort of becomes one track. Although on every issue of Dark Side after 2010, they separate them into 2 tracks. So we'll talk about Speak to Me and Breathe in the Air as one track. What do you think of them?
Well, that's like everything on the album.
So it's really hard to sort of distinguish track by track and sort of talk about them individually. So how about coming at it from a different angle? Any standout tracks that you really, really like that bring back huge memories of how much you liked them, or at the time you played more than any of the other tracks, or did you play the whole album as a thing?
Yeah. Well, I don't really remember lifting up the needle and putting it inside, jumping a track. I'd put it on at the start and listen through. Same as Wish You Were Here. You just put on side 1, play it through.
True.
I very rarely got a side 2, but I certainly played side 1 all the way through. The standout track for me, I think, was amazing. Probably now I'm thinking about sort of Money and Time, Us and Them now, but initially it was the great Gig in the Sky. I'd never heard anything like that before. Sure, if there had been a sort of progressive rock thing with that sort of no vocal on it, and it's really, you know, it was a piece of music, weren't it?
Yeah,
whole thing, and they didn't write about it being about mental health issues and the lunatic in the asylum, but certainly what you picked up from it with the little speaking going through it and stuff, and the title of another tracks and stuff. It was a piece, and I think that's why it had the long. That's why people have liked it so long, because it's in a way, I suppose it's like what some people like orchestral pieces for totally different reason, but you don't really pick out just a bit, do you, from an orchestral thing? You play the whole of it, wouldn't you? Yeah. Not that I do ever have, but it's a bit lame comparing it to an orchestral piece, because it's not at all. It's just a sort of for feel sort of example. But the standout one for me early on was the great gig in the Sky.
I guess the standout one for me is the obvious one, Money, because I used to hear that, and it was just a really good bass line. And but later on, like you, Time, Brain Damage, and Eclipse all standard out.
What's your favourite? Being it's 1973 and two albums came out within a month of each other, both with a track called Time. What's your favourite Time? I know what the answer is, but
it's really hard. I mean, that's probably Bowie, yeah, but I really, really like Pink Floyd's Time. So I'd say Bowie, but Pink Floyd's Time is so close it's nearly equal. Mm-hmm. But you just mentioned about those voices, and I was going to mention them earlier, and I totally forgot.
Oh.
Yeah, apparently...
There's some good stories there.
Yeah, apparently Roger Waters came up with the idea of sitting people in a darkened studio and showing them flashcards and asking them to say what came into their minds. And then they edited down what they said and dropped the bits into the album. And one of the guys that did it was their road manager, Peter Watts, who is the father of Naomi Watts, also his wife, and Chris Anderson. But what was quite funny, or I thought was quite funny, is that Paul and Linda McCartney, or Wings, were recording in a studio next door, and they came in and also took part in the flashcards. And Waters dropped Paul and Linda McCartney's efforts because he decided they were trying too hard to be funny. But he did use Henry McCulloch, who said the famous lines, "I don't know, I was really drunk at the time."
Oh.
But Paul and Linda never made the cut because they were trying too hard to, he wanted someone to be spontaneous, and they were trying too hard to be witty or whatever and come up with something witty. But I do believe isn't there a story, I think you told me, that they used the doorman or something for one of them?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I'm sure they did, yeah. Yeah.
But I never knew McCulloch was on it. But yeah, you reminded me when you said about the voices. To me, yeah, as time, no pun intended, went on and I got older, and listening to the album more, different tracks, and I know that you said to me that you don't listen to the lyrics in the same way and sort of like go into them in depth. But the song Time did sort of start taking on more of a meaning as I got older. Like there's lines in it like where is it? I'm looking at the lyrics now. About the sun racing round you and coming up behind you, and it's a new day. The sun is the same, but you're a day older, shorter of breath, and one day closer to death.
Yeah.
And then it's talking about at the end, the time is gone, the song is over. I thought I had something more to say, and I guess that as I've got older, I sort of it makes you think that of what you wanted to do when you were 14 and 15 and 16 and 18,
yeah,
and what you've actually achieved when you're 60, and you thought you had something more to say. You thought you were going to do more, and you never did. I think it's a really clever song for sort of young people who were probably in their 20s or 30s when they wrote it, to write. And another thing I didn't realise, I looked at the the writing credits, and it said all the writing credits, but the writing credits were for the music only. Apparently, Roger Waters wrote all the lyrics.
Okay.
So he's responsible for those wonderful words. But I also like Brain Damage and Eclipse. They've grown over the years. They're two songs that if I'm going to take tracks from Dark Side and put them onto well, not anymore because I haven't got a CD player in the car anymore. But when I used to take tracks and put them onto a CD to play in the car, it was nearly always Time, Money, Brain Damage and Eclipse, and occasionally Us and Them.
Yeah.
But I think you're definitely right in the way that it is an album that has to be seen as a piece of music as opposed to individual tracks. But if you're going to take one track off it, I suppose Money was the obvious single, which they did do in America.
Yeah, top 10 hit in the States. If I recall, actually had the American single. Money. Money is a great track, but I sort of go against it because it's now the obvious one to like.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd agree. I don't listen to lyrics and stuff, but I couldn't help know the lyrics for Dark Side of the Moon because, as you know, I knew the whole album.
Oh yeah.
I could recite it. And,
backwards.
So those lyrics you said there, but I get the same thing. It actually sort of means something when they say it, and you can. I think everyone puts their own spin on what the lyrics are, and they can mean anything to anybody, can't they? That's the beauty of them, rather than being specifically their story. It's a lyric which you can use for yourself. They're all things which add up for making it why it's an album that's lasted for so long.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the lyrics at the time as you're talking. There's just different lines that keep jumping out at me, like every year is getting shorter. You never seem to find the time. Well, that is, as you get older, that is true. Every year does seem to get shorter, and it's just it's quite. I think Waters was very clever with his lyrics. He was obviously thinking of it as a man near the end of his life when he wrote this, and I suppose it's not hard if you're a good lyricist to put yourself in that position, but I still think it's a really clever song.
Yeah.
Another thing I've just noticed that I meant to mention earlier that I jotted down, the famous Wizard of Oz thing that suddenly sprang up in the 2010s, where someone claimed that if you played Dark Side the Moon alongside Wizard of Oz, but with the Wizard of Oz sound turned down, it synced. For instance, apparently when Dorothy begins to jog in the film, the lyrics "No one told you when to run" during Time is playing, and on the tightrope style, there's a tightrope style dancing during Breathe, and the man has his ear to the Tin Man's chest when you've got the heartbeats going on the album, and so on and so on and so forth. And members of Floyd and Parsons all categorically deny there's any connection and say it's a complete load of eyewash, which I actually think it is. But apparently it's taken up a life of its own, and this whole website's about how you can sync this album to Wizard of Oz, and how it's in mesh, and they wrote it with Wizard of Oz in mind and all this business. And it's quite interesting the way that people take an album, especially like this, and sync it to another sort of classic film and come up with all these mad theories.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know, it sounds nonsensical, but if it's like, next thing you'll be telling me is that Paul McCartney died years ago.
Well, apparently he did, yeah. I mean, if you look at the cover of Abbey Road, it tells you.
He's not wearing shoes, is he?
Yeah, no. And someone who looked like him, who just happened to be a good songwriter and musician, has for the last, 45 years, been masquerading as him and making all that money.
All right. Okay. And the next thing you tell me, the singer of the Mean Machine was not trained by Professor Marconi.
No, that is true. That is a rumor that went round that it was that the great Professor Bernard Marconi trained. No one could believe that the bloke in the Mean Machine sat on the top of a 65 bus going yallery, 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 as he was taught by Bernard Marconi. But
or Lloyd Ryan.
Or Lloyd Ryan, yeah. I mean, what a versatile...
Express.
Yeah, the man who trained Phil Collins. I mean, what a versatile person I am. Been trained by two classic people like that, and they couldn't...
You can't sing and you can't play drums, even though taught by experts.
Taught by experts. I must be their biggest failure. So now we've gone on about my ineptitude to learn drums, bass and singing. We can get back to some talented musicians, Pink Floyd. As you say, it is something that's better listened to as a piece of music because, again, we haven't recorded this all in one go. And since we've last spoken, I've actually sat down and listened to it. And there were tracks I had in my mind that I really liked. Time, and I really liked Brain Damage and Eclipse and Money and everything. I do really like them, but I forgot how much I like some of the other tracks, like The Great Gig in the Sky and Us and Them. And it just it's just one of those albums that works as a piece of music.
Yeah, it just flows into each track, and so you don't really take them out of sequence, do you really? Just play it when you got some time, you put it on. Not one that you would dip into, is it?
No, not at all. A couple of things I did think that whilst I was listening to the track Time, the other lyric that used to always sort of resonate with me, I obviously heard that, and it's the in the second verse, and then one day you find 10 years have got behind you, no one told you when to run, you missed the starting gun. That always used to stick with me because you wake up one day and you're 10 years older and you suddenly think, where the hell's the last 10 years gone? And
that only happened to you a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. I thought it was the last 60 years gone.
Yeah.
But and the other thing, which is going to make me sort of eat my words on what I've been banging a saber about on the Bowie one and this one about the re-releases, I went onto Pink Floyd's official YouTube site and watched their 50th anniversary video. It's about 15 minutes long, about the 50th anniversary. And I really want the 50th anniversary box set, but it's £225, so I'm not going to get it. But it looks really, really good.
Why is that, man?
It's just the packaging and what they've got with it. It just looks. It means where I've sort of moaned about people re-releasing albums and just literally remastering them, and you got not getting anything with it. This one, they've actually thought about it because part of the concept, apparently, of Pink Side the Moon was about the pyramid in Egypt and everything. So they've Hypnosis or whatever they're called, the design company.
Yeah.
They've used that to think of the packaging for the new 50th. So it's a box within a box within a box and a box, and each box has different things. Like one's got a really good thick booklet with all pictures and all the information that was going on at the time. One's got the original repos of the original posters plus other posters and early sketches of things. One's got something else, and you finally get down to this gold box, and when you get that down to the gold box, that's got the original album in it plus the 1974 gig on a separate double album. So it just looked like it had so much stuff with it, and it just looked really good when they were unboxing it. And I thought, I wonder how much that is. So I flipped over to eBay and suddenly realised it was £225. So it's out of my price range, but it's one of the few re-releases that if I had the money, I would definitely buy.
Yeah, I'd not checked it out, but I might go for it. But I'm still after this Jerry Monroe single, in a picture sleeve, which is going to break me.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like putting them on the weighing scales. Pink Floyd 50th anniversary box set, Jerry Monroe picture single, picture cover. Sorry. What on earth can you what you're going to go for? It's absolutely it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
Right. So now we go on to the other thing that we haven't touched yet, the iconic cover. Like David Bowie's lightning flash, that you yourself said the other time that you could see the lightning flash without anything else and you'd know it was Bowie and Aladdin Sane. The Pink Floyd prism and the triangle, the pyramid and everything, is totally and utterly iconic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
On that video that I was talking about that I saw, they were interviewing. Now I'm going to get this name completely wrong. Storm Thorgerson, who actually spelled Chor as in Thor, and then Gerson, Thorgerson. Yeah. He was saying that he came up with the idea because the other bloke from Hypnosis, I've forgotten his name now, the bloke who owns the actual company, was looking through. Fred Hypnosis. He was looking through one of those Who, What, When and Why books that used to come out when we were kids. I remember them when we were at school, and it was about prisons.
I don't.
Yeah, well, obviously he went to school in the 80s, and I went to school in the 60s, so it's a bit different in my day. But it was he looked over his shoulder, and he had just had the idea of this white light hitting a prism and then coming out the other side, and all fractions of coloured light and everything else, and they drew it up in kids' crayon, and then they drew a load of other ones that were some similar and some not so similar, and then laid them all out in the studio, and the band came in, and they all eventually picked this one as the one that they decided to go for. But apparently he was a teenage friend of David Gilmour and best man at Gilmour's wedding, so he's got and he also knew Sid Barrett at college, so he's got a bit of a history with the band.
Oh, cool.
But he's also done album covers for Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Scorpions, UFO, Peter Gabriel, Genesis, Yes, and the list goes on. If I read it, we'll be here for another 10 minutes. But he's obviously well respected in the industry. But the only criticism about the cover came from Wright, who suggested something smarter, neater, and more classy. But then came back to this one and said he liked it because it was simple, like the artwork of Black Magic Chocolate Box. But I don't think there's a lot you can really say about the cover, and much more you can say about the cover apart from it is absolutely iconic. Which will bring us round to our own personal history with Floyd. We saw them the once at Nebworth, didn't we?
We did, yep.
And that was it
July 1975.
Yep. And I do remember we were quite near the back, as opposed to being quite near the front.
Yeah. We was so far back with no binoculars or anything that we didn't actually see anything apart from the rocket coming over, or another bomb coming over the crowd, whatever it was. That
was really impressive.
Linda Lewis was as if she wasn't there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I remember that.
Captain, I remember you were we couldn't really get into really because you were really getting into Captain Beefheart.
Yeah. I remember. I loved Beefheart. That you just.
What was that album of his?
Trout Fish something or other.
Trout Mask replica.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to say to you, who else played on the? Because
Steve Miller Band. We saw. Really? Yeah.
I've got this really bad.
The only song we would have known there would have been for Joker.
Yeah.
Which was a massive non-hit in 1973, 74.
Yeah.
Got loads of airplay, if I recall. It was always on the radio, and the album cover was always in the one-stop window, because he had his face painted like Kiss.
That's right, yeah.
Didn't he, on the Joker album, and it just bombed out as a hit. Well,
am I right in thinking that there was someone else on the lineup that wasn't sort of a big musical act, more of a sort of a
Monty Python?
Was it Monty Python?
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah.
I've got a feeling I was looking at I was really looking forward to seeing Monty Python, because I think they came on to replace Roy Harper.
Right.
Who was on the bill originally, and then on the day they came came in, and I seem to recall them doing the parrot sketch and stuff like that. But they've so far, I imagine there's some great photos of the day. You know, the NME was probably great photos of them all, but we couldn't see a thing.
Nowadays, they'd have 10 massive screens around everywhere, so you'd see it. But one thing that did impress me was the way that bomb was on a wire, and it took the whole of the set to go across everyone's head and then hit the screen or hit the stage just at the right moment at the climax of a song. But we didn't stay till the end, did we?
You lot all were all set to leave at the end of the Floyd gig, but I was convinced they were going to play some of Dark Side of the Moon for an encore. So I persuaded to stay back, and they did. They didn't play some of it. They played the whole album, didn't they?
Yeah,
for an encore. And we did have to leave. I remember walking down the road towards Nebworth Station, hearing them playing Dark Side of the Moon.
We should have actually been like rock and roll rebels and teenagers as we were, and stayed for the whole gig, and then just...
So much for us being rock and roll rebels. I think there weren't many people leaving, were there?
No, us? We should have kicked in the bloody field.
We were Londoners, weren't we? We weren't going to rough it sleeping in some country field, were we?
No.
Others would rough it, not us.
No, not unless we had a 5-star hotel. It's like we were talking recently about wanting to go to a what do you call it? Festival again. But we wouldn't go and camp. We'd have to have a hotel nearby we could go and stay overnight in, because we're too old to do the whole camping thing now. So that really sort of wraps it up, doesn't it? Really, I think. Great album. Absolutely. No real way of saying this track. There are probably standout tracks for different people. Different people like different songs, whatever else. But it's just a case of what you like and what you don't like, really.
It's just sit down on the sofa, dim the lights, have a glass of what you fancy, glass of wine, beer, probably beer, Pepsi.
Yeah, can't say, yeah.
Dim the lights and just listen to the whole thing. If you've got a tatty copy, don't listen to that, stream it. So, it should be heard. No, clean. Shouldn't. Well, I'd say at least, yeah.
Yeah, one fact that's just popped up in front of my eyes, which I find it hard to believe, but I'm not calling the people who've written it a liar. But it's according to this, it says that lots of Pink Floyd fans own more than one copy of this great album, but no one will probably have all the versions, because as of 2020, there are over 1,000 different editions of Dark Side of the Moon floating about. Gatefold sleeves, special stickers, posters, quadraphonics.
I have heard that, and if you go on to Discogs, I think the Dark Side of the Moon site goes on now forever. Worldwide, there are loads of copies.
Right, and Alan Parson got paid 35 quid a week for working on the album, but I suppose 35 quid a week in 1973 wasn't a bad money. It wasn't too bad of money, but it probably wasn't.
No, I've just decided I'm going to collect every version. Yeah.
That will be a collection. The next show, I believe we were discussing earlier, was going to be where we go through some of the records that we brought recently. Especially you, I believe, have had a good week this week with what you've had turn up.
I'm hoping there'll be some good stuff turning up tomorrow as well. So should be able to do a good show, chatting about each of the other songs. I'll put you in for another show in the future. You've got bags of records all over your flat that you haven't looked in the bags for years and years.
Yeah.
I just saw a YouTube video the other day of a guy who had a bag. It was in the loft. It was his parents and his records when he was young, of 40 years, and he hadn't opened it for 40 years, and he was pulling out the records and talking about them and anything he knows about it. And that might be a good show with you to get a bag and pull out some of the records.
Yeah, I can do that. So we'll do that. So the next couple of shows we'll be talking about records, old and new, and then we'll maybe do another album, because I thought we were talking about working our way through 73, because that's got some real classic albums that came out.
Oh, well, where
not all of them, not all of them, but some of the big ones.
I did mention Houses of Holy might be good to do, because I don't think you're too au fait with that album, so it might be worth you giving it a listen for once, and then we do one of these shows about it, where we can talk about every track. Can't be good.
And on that note, we will say, I will say goodbye from you, and
goodbye from me.
And you can say goodbye from you, and we will see you all next time. Oh, what? I nearly forgot. I do it every time. I nearly forget. Yeah. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell button to see when we upload again, because it's a small click for you, but it really helps us with the algorithm and getting our videos out there. Thank you.